It is Monday morning. It's the 1st of February. Who could believe it? Who would have thunk it? The 1st of February. And markets opening a little bit higher in Asia, but nothing much to shout about. Let's welcome Omar Najia, our regular Monday morning quarterback, as the saying goes. But Omar Najia, Global Head of Derivatives, BB Energy. Omar, your thoughts this Monday morning after a wild ride on the equity markets last week, and where that correlation may be going?
Yeah, so basically, if you look this morning, the East is up, as you're saying. The US futures are up like 0.5% or so, and I think oil is up like 20-30 cents. So nothing to write home about. There's also that thing about people buying silver because of that, those traders who were trying to squeeze JP Morgan and all the rest of it. So I can't remember what their handle is. It's something like Bet Wall Street or something like that. You know, the people who did gameplay and all the rest of it. So it's going to be very interesting. But in general, like the market, I think basically it's always nice to see corrections. I think people, sentiment-wise, people are getting more and more of this, vaccinated and all the rest of it. So you feel kind of, bulletproof. We're finally seeing the light and all that kind of stuff. So pretty positive, I feel.
The light, however, at the end of, in some ways, a tunnel, that light seems to be getting a little bit further away, I would argue. Frank Kane, senior columnist at Arab News, in the sense that a month ago, the vaccine euphoria was everything would be solved, everything would happen rather quickly, but ultimately the vaccine rollout is meeting head on with lockdowns. Saudi Arabia now locked down till May. What's your outlook this Monday morning, where all of those different things converge?
Yeah, well, Sean, hi. The Saudi news was quite a surprise, wasn't it? To go for such an extended period at the middle of May, that takes in the whole of Ramadan and the whole of Eid. Where lots of people would normally travel to Saudi Arabia. So that really is quite a significant one. People there told me that they wanted to avoid the possibility of increased transmission during Ramadan. And during the Eid celebrations, which is a big religious festival, of course, and people travel to Saudi Arabia for it. So that was the thinking there. But in terms of overall optimism, there was a very good piece in the FT. Tim Harford, their economics guru, very good piece at the weekend talking about light at the end of the tunnel, just as you did. And he calculated that there would be dramatic progress in February as the effects of the vaccine began to be felt, and as more and more doses got rolled out in the UK, here in the UAE too. He thought that he said cutely that the funeral directors will see a fall off in business from Valentine's Day onwards. It was quite a nice line, I suppose. A contrast. But there are clouds, aren't there? Problems with delivery. Problems with efficacy.
Ultimately 1%, not even of the world's population, currently vaccinated on February 1st.
Right. Yeah.
Let's go to Russia with Vitaly Yermakov, who is the Senior Research Fellow at the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies. Vitaly, welcome to the table. Your first time joining us, and thank you very much for that. What is the outlook for Russia this Monday morning? I'm very particularly happy that you're here to give us some insights on the current sort of not uprising is a big word, but ultimately street demonstrations in Russia with the Navalny case. What's the outlook for that? What does that mean for Russia as a whole?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm not a political analyst. I'm an oil and gas analyst.
All you have to do is look out your window.
Let me offer you some thoughts on the oil market first, and then I could comment, of course, on the Navalny case. But this is going to be not professional, so to say. Look, people have been thinking about what shape the recovery might take for quite some time now, and whether it's going to be a V-shaped recovery, a W-shaped recovery, or K-shaped recovery, meaning that some countries would recover sooner, some later. But we are looking at a V-shaped recovery at the moment, and it may be the case that even though international travel is going to be restricted, but the restrictions and lockdowns within many countries will be lifted. And this sort of creates some uncertain picture for oil demand, because on the one hand, as far as international travel goes, obviously, and for jet carrier demand, this is going to be a more difficult path forward. But for every economy, in terms of its domestic restrictions, which are going to be less, then this probably means that oil demand in each country for gasoline and for diesel is going to recover somewhat. So it's a mixed bag somewhat.
And when do you, I mean, from that point of view, the outlook, clearly the outlook forecast for 2021 is working on a narrative, first half problematic, second half massive recovery. And with that, the average of a 6 million barrel a day of oil demand recovery in 2021. Given the dynamics of the first month now into the second month, do you think that demand recovery forecast still holds?
Well, it's difficult. Basically, assessing the timing and exact number for near term, it's a guessing game. Well, we are going to see it, but in terms of the big picture, and I have now the luxury of looking beyond the noise. In terms of the big picture, I think the recovery is coming. Oil demand will be back. The timing is uncertain, but generally, I think we are looking at slightly higher prices by the end of the year, unless, of course, we see a very strong response from the US tight oil producers, which I think is doubtful.
Or we get more oil out of places like Russia. I mean, if Saudi Arabia hadn't made the unilateral 1 million barrel a day cut earlier this month, Vitaly, what would that have looked like? And where does Russia stand, do you think, on the outlook for further alignment with Saudi Arabia on this cut, where Russia is not taking the burden that Saudi is taking?
Well, this was sort of the alliance between Russia and the Saudi within the OPEC Plus format. It was from the start. It was sort of a strange marriage, so to say. But difficult times make strange bedfellows, right? And for Russia, the key interest, I believe, was to avoid extreme price volatility, especially on the downside. And so they really also want to manage the market, the oil market, as much as the Saudis. And in this sense, the interests are unified. On the other hand, of course, Russia is not a swing producer. Basically, for technical reasons, it's not. It cannot increase or decrease its oil output at will and very quickly. And the Saudis, in this sense, would have to carry the burden. Russia has really difficult trade-offs with regards to output cuts, and the initial plan was really sort of to rein in the increases in oil output programs of individual Russian oil companies, rather than to force them to cut. And until April, May of 2020, this arrangement between Saudi and Russia within OPEC Plus worked relatively well. But then, of course, we know that these dramatic production cuts in May of 2020, they forced everyone to really take the hit. And now I think the Saudis are trying to accommodate some of Russia's concerns caused by really some seasonal technical reasons to slightly increase output. But in general, I think that this cooperation could work. the problem really sits with the US, because this is the main challenge to the managers of the oil market, because they essentially have been free riders. And if the response from US is as strong as it was in 2017, 2018 in terms of incremental additional oil output, then it creates the old conundrum sort of between the oil managers and oil market managers and free riders.
Omar, on that point, looking out to the year ahead, given the recovery, given the price, where do those two things come together vis-a-vis the likes of shale and these higher cost producers being able to come back into the market, bring extra supply, and essentially keep everything somewhat limited on the upside? How do you see a break through that?
Well, I mean, I don't think these, shale producers can kind of, come back and start growing again. I think the idea that shale will grow, I think that's moot. I think that's dead in the water. Can they continue to limp along and survive? And probably, but again, I mean, it's a very, if you don't kind of subscribe to what I'm saying, it's very simple. All you need to do is look at equity prices in the US of shale producers. That's it. Look at them for the past 5 years, and you'll see a line straight down for most of them, for the vast majority of them. So I don't think that the market believes, equity markets believe, I don't think that market participants in oil believe that, shale is going to come back. And, it's shale.
But ultimately, it is. I mean, whether it's shale and or as prices rise, every dollar brings in a different price point, a different production opportunity for a profit margin. Where do those two things intersect? Given that we still have so much idle capacity on the OPEC side, where is the upside for oil to break through this range that we're now in, 55, give or take?
Okay, so basically, let's assume prices keep ticking higher. The market's backwardated. Products are getting nearly or almost, backwardated, which means all storage. And there's no problem with oil storage, crude oil storage. There's a problem with product stocks. Once that goes, and it's going, then basically you have empty product stocks. And if you get demand come second half, they're going to have to run, refineries have to run very, very hard to make all that product for all that demand. So that's, I think, where the spike is going to come from. You get products come out of storage because of the backwardation, and then afterwards, basically, you get demand that comes, real physical demand, that basically pushes refiners to try and max production. And I think there's going to be a lag between the two, and you're going to see prices ticking up. Apart from that, you've also got a massive amount of geopolitical problems, most notably Iran, Libya, Venezuela, all these things. So I think basically in terms of supply, since, Russia and OPEC are playing nice, I don't expect major, surprises to the downside. I think upside surprises from geopolitical, from demand being better than people forecast, the virus dying away. For example, the virus cases in the US dropped off 35%, I think, last week, just after Biden took office, and the two things are unrelated.
See what happens?
But still,
Biden comes,
absolutely.
Boom. See? The
absolutely.
Magic.
He's a hero. He's a magician.
The magic sauce.
And in
Frank,
the same way,
meanwhile, back at the ranch in the Gulf, we're faced with lockdowns in Saudi. Obviously, we've got the UAE facing challenging. Are you Dubai? No flights to the UK. I can't remember when that obviously happened last spring when this first started, but nonetheless, after the boom of tourism in December now. So my question to you is ultimately, within the case of Saudi in particular, the fiscal health of Saudi Arabia, its ability to maintain this discipline on oil supply and limited revenue and so forth. I mean, offering 1 million barrels so that Russia can make more money seems really generous when your economy in Saudi Arabia is having a difficult time. What's the outlook, do you think, for Saudi's endurance?
Yeah. Well, the Russian OPEC Plus minister, Alexander Novak, called it a New Year's present, didn't he, from Saudi Arabia? And, there certainly was an element of philanthropy in it, wasn't there, it seems to me, because it doesn't make economic sense for Saudi to cut that much. They haven't made money on the upside of the price to compensate for the loss of output. So I think that there were probably, questions of international relations at play there as well, as the energy relationship. But this Saudi-Russia partnership began as a pragmatic thing. We all know that, but I do think it has gone, rather beyond that in some respects since then. And the energy ministry in Saudi Arabia and the Russian OPEC Plus minister, anyway, they have good relations. Because Alexander Novak is no longer the Russian energy minister.
Yeah.
But he is involved with OPEC Plus talks.
Do you expect that Saudi will have to, after the year 2020, they're trying to get, at least they were trying to get back to the 2030 vision, growth, investment, FDI and so forth. Will it face more austerity, the economy in Saudi? How does it grow when the borders are closed?
Well, Sean, did you see the FII, the Future Investments Initiative, that was held last week in Riyadh? The big investor jamboree. That really, I think that was Saudi putting its foot on the gas of Vision 2030 in many ways. The PIF has committed to $40 billion investment per annum between now and 2025 in the Saudi domestic economy, not in terms of going overseas and buying US shares or other investments, but direct investment in the Saudi economy. So look, there is. You mentioned lockdown. There is no lockdown at the moment. The airports are closed, but there is no domestic lockdown.
Right.
So the domestic economy is still ticking over. Austerity, last year the main symbol of that austerity was a rise in the VAT rate, to 15% from 5%. That was quite a severe rise. But that's kind of played through now. People are used to it. There was a decline in consumer spending anyway, which meant that it wasn't really, a huge hit. But they seem to be putting an awful lot of money into the domestic economy, and this is all Vision 2030 related. I know there has been lots of skepticism about progress on the mega projects, but so far, I am just as skeptical as other journalists here. So far, I have not detected any massive slowdown in these projects, and in some ways,
as we wait, we're a month away from the OPEC meeting in early March as to whether this New Year's gift, as you describe it, is the gift that keeps on giving. Yeah. Vitaly, back in our early part of our conversation, not to put you on the spot with all things Navalny, but nonetheless, over the weekend we saw demonstrations in Russia. We saw a coup overnight in Myanmar. We've got a war on the border of Ethiopia and Sudan. Yemen continues. Libya. There is a growing number of little fires everywhere, and I'm wondering, from the perspective of Russia coming into Europe, the new U.S. administration around Nord Stream 2, where does that sort of geopolitical uncertainty play into that project and into that future relationship within the context of Europe, energy supply to Russia and so forth?
Well, right. Yeah. Well, the pandemic has been difficult, hard on everyone. And we are seeing sort of these tremors. Hopefully, these are tremors that would not lead to eruption. But we have seen this situation when the crowds stormed the Capitol in the US. We have seen those military coups in East Asia. Now, sort of all this unrest in Russia caused by the arrest of Navalny. And the narrative there, it's pretty much the boy who lived against the Dark Lord. Like, this is the narrative that is being presented to the Western audience. And at the same time, sort of the general trend, yes, it's tremors, increased tensions, but we need to be careful about each individual case. We need to look at really at these events separately and analyze the causes and effects there separately. With regards to the demonstrations in Russia, these protests were against the arrest of Alexei Navalny, who became sort of the leader of the protest, the figure, sort of a very symbolic figure. He was detained upon returning to Russia from Germany, where he was being treated after he was poisoned in Russia. And so it's a situation when his family, his wife, Navalny's wife, asked President Putin. He managed to find a channel to ask Putin to let fly Navalny to Germany for medical treatment when he was in coma. Very promptly, the Navalny family found the sponsors who organized a separate flight, the medical bombardier flight that took him, evacuated him on a very short notice. And Putin personally ordered all Russian authorities to let him go, basically to go away from normal procedures. It was done in a very urgent manner. And apparently for Putin, it was basically a way to remove this opposition leader and his harsh critic away from the country. But then Navalny decided to return. And upon his return, he was arrested for the parole violations, because formally, when he was in Germany, he was not showing up for his regular appearances in front of Russian authorities. And to explain, he was on probation after a sentence he received, again under.
And does it ultimately add to? Is it a growing issue? Is it something that has got traction? And we've seen the last few weekends. It's happened before, obviously, in previous years, where the street has got a little bit loud against Putin. But is this anything different? Is there anything more to it, or does it fade out in time?
Well, look, I mean, I went into all these details about the case just to really say that this is pretty much a narrative that is Putin, Navalny against Putin personally. And Navalny really raised the stakes in this, even though he knew perfectly well that under formal reasons he could be arrested, and he was arrested because formally, legally, the Russian state, under its legal requirements, indeed found ways to pinpoint at formal violations. The court proceedings, the hearings regarding Navalny's case are going to take place, I believe, tomorrow. And that's when the decision will be taken by the court whether to put him in jail for real. Because right now he's detained before the court proceedings. This means that we may see another significant unrest and demonstrations if indeed he's sentenced for a real term.
Right.
Whether this is going to result in significant unrest in Russia, I don't think so. These protests have been visible in terms of TV narratives, news narratives, but in terms of the numbers, even the numbers that the opposition is claiming for the number of people who went to the streets, well, this still is 1.5% of Russia's population overall.
Yeah, no, clearly it's not. It's not of that scale, but obviously it doesn't take many to change the direction of things. Let's go to the survey question quickly before we give everybody the last word. Do you expect global oil demand to grow in Q1 over Q4 2020? Will global oil demand grow in Q1 over Q4 2020? We've seen in China the disruption to the annual New Year's, a lot of people not traveling, obviously lockdowns in different countries, including our own here in the UAE. But will we see global oil demand as an average, as a whole, grow in Q1 over Q4? Yes or no? Will all the growth come later in the year? Let's go round the table. Omar, Monday morning, as always, outlook for the week ahead, the days ahead, where the markets could travel, what will guide them, do you think? You're on mute, sorry, Omar.
So basically, it's more of the same. So we're waiting to see what happens with the quote-unquote stimulus package, 1.9 trillion US dollars. We're waiting to see the effect of these vaccines, the massaging or not of numbers of people being infected with COVID in the US. I mean, if you have the same thing, then come the end of this week, COVID cases in the US could be down 70%. So that should be quite a fillip for everybody. And I think, markets are correcting, and I think basically they're all buys. We could correct further, never mistake the, potential for us to go lower, but trends in equities, trends in oil, and trends in Bitcoin are all to the upside, and the dollar. So no change in view. So listen.
Okay, Frank, your thoughts week ahead from a regional point of view or elsewhere?
Yeah, regionally, Sean, it's all about the pandemic, and it's all about COVID, and indeed about vaccines. I want to see how Dubai reacts to the UK air ban, and I think that they will react by doubling down on the vaccination program here, which, as you know, is well advanced. Because they've made the economic calculation that they have to keep the place open to some degree, and if the case numbers rise while they're vaccinating, then they will do that. And the second thing I'm looking for relates to Saudi Arabia and COVID, because Saudi Arabia has not been as efficient as Dubai. It has a much bigger population, of course, in getting the vaccine out, and there is some question about supplies. And this talks to the Russia relationship with Saudi Arabia. They have been in talks with Russia about Sputnik. I think you might see an announcement that that Saudi Arabia has authorized the Sputnik V vaccine.
Thank you. Let's get the survey result before giving Vitaly the last word. Okay, 50-50. Do you expect oil demand to grow in Q1 over Q4? 48% yes, 52% no. So essentially half-half. It's an open toss of a coin, it seems, the demand recovery to come later in the year. Vitaly, your thoughts and outlook for this week?
Oh, well, my outlook for Russia in general. Well, I think we are going to.
For anything that could impact the oil markets of their direction of travel.
Well, look, as I said, I mean, let's try to look beyond the noise. I think we are on a recovery path, and the timing matters in the near term. But really, I think we are going to be better off this year than the last year, definitely. And we are on the way out. Not yet out of the woods, but on the way out.
And in the context of the Russian economy navigating its way back with this COVID vaccine rollout, is it moving according to plan? Is it on target? Is it?
Well, look, for Russia, the key challenge is, of course, is to rekindle its economic growth, because Russia has been extremely conservative with regards to its macro policies, and as a result, it managed to balance its budget, because Russia basically needs a much lower break-even oil price to balance the budget now after this massive ruble depreciation. It managed to grow up its hard currency reserves, basically building up the war chest for the future. But the real problem has been very slow rates of economic growth, and that's the key challenge.
Well, the big decision 2 years ago to increase the pension age by 8 years or something to that effect, under the duress of the macroeconomic outlook there, that's still, I think, a big issue to play out in Russia. But that's a wrap for today. Vitaly, thank you for joining us. Look forward to having you again. Omar, shukran, thanks so much. And Frank as well, thank you for your insights and your contribution. Let's all keep our eyes on where silver goes. It seems silver is this week's entertainment after, I'm not sure, whatever there was last week's entertainment. LNG is somewhere in the background. That was a month ago's entertainment. But what will be the next thing to skyrocket to the moon? It seems silver is this week's. Is it a indicator of other things? Is it an indicator of a stable market, of a stable recovery, or is it an indicator of things going a little bit wobbly? I think that's perhaps still to be seen. But thank you very much. Have a great week, everybody. And if you can, vaccine.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.